Well, I was raised by my mother and father, and doing back then, everything was simple. Everybody knew what they had to do, and everybody got along good together.
My mother was Rosa White Dyson. She was a maiden name was White. My father was Charles Dyson, and he was a transplant to Spotsylvania County. My mother's family goes back to 1811.
Okay, my mother's name was Annabelle Pierce. My father's name was Joseph Pierce, and in Spotsylvania. And we was born and raised, me and my 4 sisters, in Spotsylvania. We was raised on a small farm, me and my 4 sisters and mother and father, and all of us got along good together. And we went to John J. Wright School, and all of us graduated from the 11th grade, first to the 11th, all 5 of us. And we continued working on the farm as we grew up and, departed.
The land my grandmother lived on was passed to her by her uncles after the Civil War. And the land we lived on was passed to us by my grandmother when my father came in 1930. I attended John J. Wright, the 11th grade, same 11th grade that Ralph did, and finished in 1959. I'm the youngest of 7 surviving kids, 2 sisters, 5 brothers. And we attended Spotsylvania Baptist Church. Our neighbors were relatives on both sides. The community was, there were some white people in the community, but our community, immediate surroundings were all relatives for my formative years. Uncles, aunts, cousins lived in my community. No particular name, it's halfway between Snell and Spotsylvania Courthouse. But all of my family members, we got together every Sunday after church. We visited each other. The kids came by, we went to visit relatives, played with cousins, and that's what we did Saturday and Sunday, days out of school. We also had a farm. It wasn't a commercial farm, it was farms that supported the family. And so all of our food, and including meats, came from the animals we raised. And the food that we ate was food that we produced. And the only food that we converted would be wheat, and corn would be converted to meal and wheat, but it was all raised by us.
Well, I was raised by my mother and father, and doing back then, everything was simple. Everybody knew what they had to do, and everybody got along good together. Well, the main thing in the neighborhood then for our family was to work. You worked first, then you played. And we always had something to do, and everybody knew each and every day what they would be doing. The girls and myself, the only son. And everybody had their own thing to do. And then when we got through, then we could play a little bit or whatever. We got up in the morning, during the time school was out, we went in the garden, we picked vegetables, we pulled grass for the pigs. And every November we killed pigs and put them on the poles, and next day we would cut them out for meat, put it in the meat box, and stuff like that. But number one was work. Everybody had to work. That was a must. And then after we finished work, then we could play, you know. Mainly baseball. Nothing took the place of baseball. That was my thing. Very good. I got real good. Nothing got by me. Where it really started at was John J. Wright under Maurice Knobby. I played ball 3 years, high school baseball, hardball, under Maurice Knobby. And he was really the one that taught me, you know, the game, really. You know, this was, we went to different schools to play, and different schools came here to play us, and we got good. I don't think we lost over maybe one game, maybe. And that was 3 years of high school ball. And then after I left high school, I played for, I know 3 other teams, including his brother that had an all-black club out of Fredericksburg. Nothing. That ball beat me up, but it didn't get by me. Yeah. Shortstop. That was the only position I played throughout my career. I wouldn't play nowhere else. I didn't know how to play nowhere else, but I could play shortstop. Nothing got by me that was in my reach. I played one in Spotsylvania County for Robert Brothers. I played another team for John Robertson. And I played ball for Cliff Tyler, which was, what was the name of that county? Caroline County. But I played shortstop for all of those teams. I didn't play no other position. Back then, you know, when you was good at a position, you stayed at that position. You didn't switch all over like they do these days, you know. I don't mean in pro ball, you know, the little leagues, you know. Sometime, just like last year, I went to some ball games, you know, and I've seen little leagues playing 2 or 3 positions in one game. I don't see how you can get good that way. You get good at shortstop, and then after a while, you see the same guy catching. Don't make no sense to me, but that's the way it is. You can't learn that way. That's very, you know. I don't know who started that, but anyway. When we was practicing ball, catchers get over here, pitchers get over here with the catchers. That's all they did, period. And then the coach would knock the balls out to the outfield, and then the infield would get in another position, and you know, everybody, you know, and that's the way you learn. Well, you know, every game, every Sunday and Saturday afternoon, everywhere I went, once I got out of my car, everybody knew me. I don't know how. Everybody would say, "Here come Ralph. Here come Ralph." You know, and everybody knew me. I don't know how come, but you know, even the girls, that was a big deal to me back then. But as I got a little bit older, you know, I learned a little, a little sense.
Ralph's kind of modest about his playing ability. He's probably the best shortstop I've ever seen. He could hit, run, throw, and nothing got by him. He's absolutely right, nothing got by him. And, you know, Ralph played shortstop, McKinley Cook played third base, and Milton Hilliard played shortstop. I was on first. And if Ralph at that time, it was 1955, so Jackie Robinson came to the league in 1947. And by the time we were playing ball, it was probably about 8 black guys in pro ball. And 5 of those were with the Dodgers. Yankees didn't get one until a couple years later. But Ralph and McKinley went up to try out for baseball, and they had to sleep in the car because it was in West Virginia somewhere. I believe it was Senators, maybe. Well, they went to Senators. Might have been the Senators. But they had to sleep in the car because there's nowhere for black folks to sleep. And I think if they had been anything but black, those guys could, there's no reason why Ralph couldn't have made pro ball. First of all, and secondly, he had no formal training, no hit instructors, no catching instructors, no fielding instructors, none of that stuff. This is all natural ability. And he was hindered by his color. Otherwise, there's no reason why he shouldn't have made pro ball. You know.
Bad as I hate to dig into that, but if you was a black guy back then, you know, it was kind of hard for you to do certain things. I can recall me and my dad, we used to go to town on Saturday morning to get groceries from A&P, which was the only, A&P and Safeway was the only 2 stores in town, so we used to park up way away from the grocery store, so we used to walk down the street and we would see signs in the window, white only, you know, and my dad would hit me on my shoulder and he said, he called me Rap Boy, he said, don't pay no attention to that, it will change one day. So I asked him and I said, Daddy, what do you mean by that? And he said, time will take care of that. And it was just hard, you know, to deal with certain things, you know, after I come to realize, you know, what was going on. And to take it a little further than that, sometimes after a ball game, we would go to a Ma and Pop's. That was in the Fredericksburg area at the time. I can't recall where. And we wanted a hamburger or soda. And we had to go around back. We couldn't go in. We went around back of the restaurant and they would shove a little wooden tray out and they would put your sandwich and soda on that, and we used to take it to our car, but we couldn't go in. And you know, and stuff like that kind of got to me after I got a little age on me, you know. And it was just kind of rough, you know. But everybody knew, you know, what was going on, but it was still rough to swallow all that stuff, you know. And to top it all off, you know, you're only a human being, you know. That's what puzzled me. You know, how can a little bit of this stuff dictate what you can do in life? You know, it's crazy. And today it's getting more crazy. They just got a better way of shoving it to you, you know. Yeah, different ways, you know, and that's a shame. I hate to even think about it, you know. It bothers me daily. Every time I leave home, before I get back, I can see something that shouldn't be, you know, concerning color. And that's no good.
Ralph, after high school, he didn't have a team he could play on, an organized team with trained players. The American Legion had an all-white team. Al Bumry eventually went through there and went pro. But that was a skilled team of white guys who he couldn't play on that team. Ralph couldn't play on that team, and just didn't have the coaching, didn't have the training, didn't have the money that would allow him to seek that training that would have carried him over the top, he could have done it. Well, you know you could have played ball with some of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
He could have done it. Just wasn't there, you know. And the only thing that we had a black team, baseball team, high school all-stars, that my brother Charles Dyson Jr. Started. And he got the best players from all the local high schools, and he put them on his team. And we played together for 2 years, I believe. Yeah. We played like 69 games, and I think we lost 2 or 3. Yeah. And we were playing older guys, because we were 16. I was 15, 16, Ralph was 17, 18. But we were young guys, but we were playing these old guys, and we played in D.C. and Southern Virginia. We had a bus. We went all over the place playing baseball because we were good enough to play. But that was the only outlet we had, community games, you know. My father, Charles Dyson Sr., was a laborer. He worked at the plant, but he was a laborer. And he was my greatest influence. He was well respected in the community, and he provided for 7 kids on that menial salary that he had. My mother was a great compliment to him, Rosa Dyson, because she taught school $5 a day. And so I was impressed by their labor and their work ethic. My mother, as I said, was a teacher, and so she taught us the education part was her responsibility in the home. And my neighbor, I had a couple of neighbors who were not educated people, but they were good people. Charles Lewis, I later discovered was my grandmother's first cousin that lived next door to us. And he was kind, they were kind to kids, he and his wife. And so he named me, in fact, he gave me the name James. And you go by and they'd give you $1 or a quarter, whatever they had to go to the store with. So I was well influenced by those people. And of course, in the community that we lived in, everybody was an influence. All the grown people were influences. My mother would send us to neighbor's house when she wasn't home. We'd go to Miss Braxton's house, or Connie Braxton's mother, and Clinton Braxton's mother's house, and stay until she got home from school, and they'd feed us. My next door neighbor on the other side was Miss Qualls, who was a Fairchild by birth. We later discovered was a cousin, my mother's second cousin. And we'd go over and stay with them, play with their kids. So it was a neighborhood. My grandmother was across the street, and she was always available because she didn't work. And so she was always available to enforce my mother's rules. And of course she had her own, but wasn't much you could do being across the street from my grandmother that she wouldn't notice and pay attention to. So well influenced by a good neighborhood, just so proud of my heritage and the people who influenced me. I think an important factor here is that our principal and teachers went to the same church that we went to. And the neighbors, all of us, we had a community church, Savannah Baptist Church. Everybody went to that same church. And so the teachers had a chance to communicate with my parents about family. The principal went to our school also. And the pastor, Reverend Bray, was of influence. He and Mr. Scott were the only 2 people, black people I knew who wore ties during the week. And so they all would meet up at church on Sunday, and then they would come by the house. Reverend Bray would come by with his family, and they would eat. And so it was a well-knitted community of people who cared about each other, who knew each other, who understood each other's family values and mores.
Okay, mainly I looked up to my father most of all, because he was a Siemens furniture, and he was the man that took care of the finance in the home. And my mother, she stayed at home and raised the kids. And everybody worked together back then, you know. In the neighborhood, which was very small, we looked up to each other, you know, and we helped each other throughout the neighborhood, which wasn't but 4 people, 4 families on that road when we was coming up as kids, and everybody got along together.
Well, we didn't have baseball diamonds, didn't have basketball courts, nor indoor pools or any of the attractions that kids have today. Swimming, we'd go down to the creek to swim, and the neighbors would get together whenever we weren't working. The neighbors, it was about 8 of us in the neighborhood, maybe 10, and we'd get together and play baseball and softball in my grandmother's front yard or in our cornfield when the corn wasn't out there. And that's what we did every opportunity we got. The neighbors would come, all the kids would come and gather and play baseball. No formal training on baseball at all, just pick up, learn as you go. And throwing rocks at each other was a big activity too. So we learned to pitch, so to speak, but the swimming was a big deal. And of course we rode horses. My grandmother had horses, we had a mule, and we'd ride them when they weren't being used. And marbles was a big deal. And, we played marbles quite a bit, but nothing took the place of baseball. And the interesting thing is that the girls played as well, and they were great softball players, and we would play. We'd choose up teams and play at every opportunity. You know, we started working as we started walking, I guess, because the folks would be in the field shucking corn, and we'd be out there shucking corn also. And so we'd plant corn, and we did what's called thinning corn. I don't know why, or even if they do it anymore, but it was called. And we would also get leaves to put in the pig pen. Out of the woods, we'd go get leaves and put it in the pig pen. And so that was a chore. That was something to do every day, pull grass out of gardens or something. So there was some work to do every day. And when you finished your work, then we would play. And we all seemed to finish around the same time. I guess shortly before dinner or shortly after dinner, we'd go out and play baseball. But work was the ethic of the family, and that was every day. There was something to do. And of course, we didn't have iPods and electronic devices and a TV. You could only watch TV at night for about an hour if the fight wasn't on, which my daddy would watch. And otherwise, you played with each other. Nobody was in the house during the daytime. We were all outside all day long. And then, when there was no work to be done, we'd be sent to pick blackberries, blueberries on the side of the road, wherever they were, also to bring home for food. That was the fun we had, but work was a project. We all had work to do. You know, the white guy on a bus line that carried people to the plant, Stewart. His name was Stewart, and he gave us the high school all-stars. He gave us a bus that we used to travel, and we went to D.C. to play. We could go up there and stay a couple of days, a couple of nights, play baseball in a league up in a series up there. Then we go to Burkeville, Virginia, Arlington, all these places on the bus that was given to us. But the reason my brother started the team, that he had played with the New York Black Yankees, which was in the Negro League. And he was in 1952, 3, when he was in New York, he played with them. And he came back here and he saw all this talent. He came to the high school games and he saw all this talent. And he thought that if he pulled the best out of each one of these schools and put them on the team, that it would be something to behold, and it was. And that's what he did. He got, from all the local schools, he got some guys, and we had about, at one point, I guess we had 18 guys. And we traveled to play. And we played over town at Maury Stadium, which was a white elementary school. And we played under the lights. And we were the first black baseball team to play under the lights. Walker Grant played football under those lights, but we were the first black baseball team to play under the lights. And we played under the lights in Washington, D.C. Can you imagine these country guys rolling into a lighted stadium to play baseball? It was just phenomenal. Cause never played under the lights before, and took some getting adjusted to, but it was a wonderful experience, friendship we kindled. Been friends for 60 years, 70 years, 65 years, as a result of that experience. And it brought, the guys over town didn't like country folk, and country folk didn't like city guys. So we'd fight all the time. But with the team, we had guys from Fredericksburg, we had guys from Caroline, we had guys from Prince William County and Stafford, and they all came together and they played ball. Consequently, when you went to the clubs after the season was over, you had entree because people there knew you. And Ralph's being modest, but they knew him because they knew he was the baddest shortstop ever came through here. And so they saw him coming. He could always get into a game if he showed up. They'd ask him to play. They'd invite him to play, even though he wasn't on the team. If he showed up at a game, they'd ask him to play. And as arrogant as he was, he carried his uniform and glove in the car with him like guys do golf clubs. And so he knew why they knew him. And cause he had the, what do you call those, the groupies. There were groupies. Ralph knows, you know, he's been married 60 years, but he knows he remembers groupies. Used to hang around to try to get his attention. My brother was a cop, first black cop in Fredericksburg, and he had a relationship with the judges, and there were a lot of white people who supported him. Many didn't. It didn't matter that much to them because he was only patrolling the black areas. But a lot of the white people supported him. So the owners of the stores gave us uniforms. We had new uniforms. The only black baseball team I recall had full uniforms at all times. We had more than one set. And so we were something to behold. And the picture you have is of the team as it was constituted. The picture you have is of the whole team. The guys moved in and out, but that was the core team in the picture. Segregation. When my brother became the cop the black policeman over town, I saw how he was treated by black people who didn't want to be policed by a black guy, and the white people whom he was not supposed to arrest. So he was disdained by the black folks because you can only arrest black people. And he was disdained by the masses of white folks who thought he was collateral. And he got in trouble for arresting white guys when he wasn't supposed to arrest white guys. And I was bothered by that because there wasn't much. My daddy was a prominent person, as prominent as black folk could be, because the community we lived in, the judge, there was one cop, he had one arm, the sheriff, and one cop, one arm. He drank liquor with my uncles and all of them. The judge drank liquor with my uncles and all of them. And yet, they went back to their side of the town and we went back to our place. And, but there was nobody that could really help my brother because he stood out there alone because he had to deal with these entities, these groups by himself with not much support from anybody, even his own community. So I decided that I wanted to do something that was going to make an impression. And so I became the second person who went to law school from the school, Arthur Burnett having been the first who went on to become a judge. So I wanted to be a lawyer to make an influence. Well, when I got to college, I became involved in the NAACP, became president of the NAACP, We protested during that. It was 1961 when the Valley, North Carolina A&T guys sat at the lunch counter. In 1962, I was in Lawrenceville, Virginia, which was a 75% black county, with no black people working in any store, no black policemen, and everybody was agrarian, and so we protested, and I got put out of school for organizing a march that shut down the movie theater and the store that was owned by the white guy who was the chairman of our trustee board at St. Paul's College. And therefore, there was a conflict between me and the president of the college, and they put me out. And I went to live with my brother by then. He was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He would go join the paratroop army. And he encouraged me to go back. And then when I went back, I finished my education and continued with my dream of going to law school. That's what happened.
Well, when once I graduated from high school, which was in 1957, June 6th, I went to work in, well, my parents couldn't send me to college, and I don't think I wanted to go nohow. But anyway, I went to work in Fredericksburg washing dishes in a restaurant. So I washed dishes maybe a couple of, I would say 6 months. And one morning, the breakfast cook didn't show up. So the boss asked me, did I think I could cook breakfast? So I know I could, but I said I would try, because I didn't want to go out on a limb too far. And so from that day on, that morning, I did a very good job, which I know I could anyway. Although I was a dishwasher, but I was watching everything else. And from that day on, I became a morning cook at this place. So I worked there 8 years. And one of my buddies came by one day and said, Ralph, I'll get you a job in Quantico at the Old Club. That was in '65. And I said, okay, Smitty, you get the job and come back by and let me know. So, which he did. He said, I got you the job. So I put in my 2 weeks notice at General Washington Inn. That was a restaurant. And so I went to Quantico in '65, and I became a cook up there. It was a little bit different because you're dealing with military people. And they thought I was military too, because you had to be just right. I remember one day, before I got the job, I had to get 2 haircuts in one day. I said, man, I hate to cut off all of my hair. I had red, long hair. But anyway, I said, well, I went down Quantico town. I got 1 haircut. And I went back up. Major Fennecy said, you got to get some more cut off. So I went back down the hill, Quantico, and got another haircut. Then I went back. So I got the job. And I stayed up there 32 years. And I could have became first chef, And that would mean you go in the office and start pricing out different menus, different wedding reception. I couldn't do that. I could do the work, but not the paper, So I didn't take that job, but I stayed first cook my whole time up there. I retired in '97 with 32 years in. And that really set me, I didn't make much money, but I did what I wanted to do, and it worked for me.
I'm influenced mostly by my niece, I guess. She's a judge in D.C., and she's a constant source of inspiration. My sister is a constant source. Marion Pendleton, Spotsylvania native, who lives here now, is a source of inspiration, and she keeps me balanced. So the times that I think I'm more than I am, she reminds me of who I am. And my niece, who's a judge, gives me sage advice on just about everything. She's my confidant. So it would be my niece, Kay Christian, and my sister, Marion Pendleton, who are my greatest influences today. I've known Ralph was ahead of me in school. And guys that were ahead of you didn't spend much time with guys who below. And so he was 2 or 3 years ahead of me in school. But we became baseball team members, and I was influenced by his suave, his swag, and his influence with the opposite sex, and the fine cars that he always had, the clean cars, clean dressed guy. I didn't realize until now that they had money. His dad was a concrete guy, must have made money. But he gave me sage advice along the way, things he saw me doing wrong, and he would tell me of other ways to do it. And I admired him greatly. And his sister was in my class. His other sisters were in my sister's class. And so the family's kind of been connected for 60 years, 75 years, I guess. And so I admired him, still do. You know, don't see him as often as I used to, but I'm still admirous of him. I really admire him.
Well, I would say, well, number one, it was baseball. And then I go from there, you know, and my family and my kids was next, you know. I always wanted to, once I got married, I always wanted to stay married. Back then, you know, most of people that got married back then stayed married. It's not like it was today, but I told my wife, I said, you know, we gonna get married, but ain't gonna be no running back to mama. You know, it ain't gonna be none of that, in and out, in and out. Once you hit the door, you stay. So, you know, we was lucky enough. I'm not saying some of our roads didn't get rough, but we had a way of smoothing it out, you know, off and on. And at least we was lucky enough to stay married 47 years. And we raised 3 girls and 1 son. And all of those are out on their own doing good with my help sometime. Okay, number one, you got to keep your head straight. That's where it starts, you know. Don't get caught up in everything you see. That's a big deal, because it's going to be some stuff out there that might, you know, turn you a different way. Just keep your head straight and keep in mind what you got. I mean, what you want to do in life. You got to concentrate on that, because you can easily get off track.
I'd say the more you accomplish, the more good things you do and recognize that you've done them, the more you want to do, and the easier it gets. And whereas life is never easy, it's a lot harder if you're stupid. And so you got to kind of be, you got to know your God, and you got to know your sanctuary. And so what do I resort when I can't figure out what's going on? And that's where we're steeped in faith. Black folk, my family, steeped in faith. And so when you don't know what to do, you pray and then go to sleep.